Hello and welcome to The Pulse. And the focus in this week's show is education. It's getting more expensive and more difficult for parents to get a good English language education for their children in Hong Kong. In part 2, we look at the controversy over one school that's planning to hike fees by more than 50% in the next 5 years. At the other end of the educational facilities scale are Hong Kong's Asian ethnic minorities, who are having problems getting their children a good Chinese language education, and that can have a disastrous effect on their future.
Excluding domestic helpers, Hong Kong's South Asian community, largely made up of Pakistanis, Nepalese and Indians, is relatively large, at just over 1%. Many are second or even third generation Hong Kongers, but due to their relatively low level of education, they often have very limited job opportunities. And that's not the only problem. Since the handover in 1997, a growing number of jobs formerly open to English speakers have added a Chinese language requirement.
Each time we look up the job, I found a job, it was like a no from the beginning.
We just went to the designated schools and we just learned English. We couldn't learn Chinese. We only know how to speak. We don't know how to read and write.
For any immigrant, grasping the dominant language of the environment can provide a path to smooth integration. Many minority parents want their children to start on the ladder early.
If we don't change this cycle, we don't bring her to a Chinese school, she'll be the same like us. She wouldn't have a lot of choices.
But the chances are that ethnic minority children won't be able to get kindergarten schooling. Roy helped his niece apply at 4 different kindergartens before she was accepted.
In the end, how did we got into one school is also a Chinese kindergarten. We had some recommendation from the friends.
According to a study by the Hong Kong Institute of Education, Southeast Asians and other ethnic minority children have less opportunity to get an education. Some 15 to 20% don't get a kindergarten education, and that hinders their chances of learning Chinese. According to the critical period hypothesis, it's much easier for children to acquire new languages up to the age of 6 or 7 than later in life.
You look at children, their learning, particularly learning of language, is most important in the first 6 years of their life. You know, if they can learn Chinese and English at the same time, when they're in the kindergarten, they have little difficulty when they actually get into primary school.
But the barriers to integrating into the mainstream education system don't stop there.
She could speak Cantonese because she went to kindergarten that was also in Chinese, but we didn't know it would be such a big difference in primary 1.
Knowing how hard it is to find a job without being able to read and write Chinese, Shabana started taking classes. Now she helps her niece Hanifa with her primary school homework. Last year, before Shabana began helping, Hanifa couldn't keep up with her schoolwork.
As you could see, she read a lot of Chinese characters, but this wasn't possible last year. She didn't even understood the instruction. She couldn't even read the instruction. I had to look up the answer and then tell her to write this. It was just like me telling her everything. She didn't know anything. It was 0. Each time she sat down, she didn't understand. She sat for hours, but without doing anything. And then when she went to school the other day, the teachers would like ask her and why she didn't finish, and they would just like punish her. But they didn't understand, like it's Chinese, and she is not a native speaker. She has nobody to help her with the homework.
嗰陣時一開學嗰陣時仲即係好混亂啦，會因為你又要即係慢慢了解佢啦，佢又唔明白你做緊乜啦，又唔明白你嘅指示啦，根本就所有嘢都好難運作嘅。咁可能加埋手勢，起身啊，起身啊，企起身咁樣，咁佢就會知你做乜啦。咁可能 stand up 咁樣叫佢起身啊，咁樣睇下佢明唔明白。然之後就佢起咗身之後咧，咪同佢講咯，嗱咁樣就叫企起身啊咁咯。
In recent years, this kindergarten has increased its intake of students from ethnic minorities. Currently, it has over 30 ethnic minority students, and the teachers are developing ways to teach them Chinese.
即係回答問題方面係有困難嘅，佢通常咧佢哋模仿你多啲啊，尤其是 K1 嘅小朋友啦，佢哋根本就可能唔明白個意思係乜，只不過係你講嗰句説話，佢就跟住你講咁樣。睇下佢拎咗乜嘢先。 咁數巴老師教你。熊貓食家子。哦，慢慢講。熊貓食竹子。佢哋學習嘅能力可能可以同中國嘅小朋友可以睇齊嘅。咁如果係真係唔得嘅時候，咁咪可能多啲手勢啊，多啲重複多啲同佢哋講啦，一句説話可能重複多講幾次，咁佢哋終有一日會明白嘅。
佢哋係 冇一個另外一個課程去為呢個或者係調適嘅課程去教呢啲少數族裔嘅學生嘅中文嘅，大家係同一齊上堂，同一齊學呢啲嘢，又冇特別嘅譬如佢哋個音啊，或者對字形嘅處理啊，冇係特別去處理嘅。
咁如果有人嚟教我哋點樣去教呢啲小朋友？ 有咩方法？直情即係可能講俾你聽有咩方法，咁我哋會喺嗰啲方法嚟試咯，即係唔使我哋而家好似冇目標咁，純粹我哋自己揾啲方法嚟令佢明白。
佢驚佢唔識喎，驚佢唔識點樣擺喎，整埋個形出嚟，睇下識唔識擺翻落去。嗱，如果咁唔得啦，係嘛？一定要咁，起碼知哦，頭先我哋學過呢個字，按翻個形擺翻落去咁咯。字嘅 部件啦，點樣嘅結構啦，佢哋有好多時候都會倒亂嚟寫嘅。
Dr. Kwan has observed kindergarten classes and worked with kindergarten teachers to create learning material in the Chinese language for ethnic minority students.
而家暫時都冇嘅教師培訓咯，即係俾佢哋去諗下教啲小朋友應該係用啲咩方法。頭先我哋話感覺器官等等，喺嗰個課程裏邊。 即係幫啲老師學習下點樣去剪裁啦。
I think we have a right to study kindergarten as well, and the government has to provide us with the aid. And the aid is Chinese as a second language, efficient for us to learn. The teachers don't know how to teach. How can the kids learn?
A survey by Unison suggests that most kindergartens with ethnic minority students face difficulties related to their varying Chinese abilities, but they don't know how to cope. Unison wants the government to recognise the difficulties faced by those for whom Chinese isn't a first language. These difficulties aren't just limited to learning Chinese, but include problems in learning every subject.
It doesn't mean that they necessarily have to learn easier Chinese. It means that I recognize their needs as second language learners.
To support the kindergartens, the Education Bureau asked the University of Hong Kong to run a university school support program last year to help teachers develop teaching methods and targets. There are doubts about its effectiveness.
If you're going to raise the language proficiency, the trainer himself or herself must be a professional first. If a professor is too busy normally and send a representative to go to the school to have the kind of co-teaching, co-planning with the teachers to do the thing, that may be a gap between the ideal way of doing things accordingly.
According to the Education Bureau, over 25 kindergartens joined the program, and it did help kindergarten teachers to develop new teaching strategies and material. The Bureau stressed that rather than adopting a one-size-fits-all policy to help non-Chinese speaking students, schools should develop their own curricula in response to different learning needs. Not everyone believes that such a scattershot policy will work to create more opportunities for Hong Kong's ethnic minorities and their future generations.
The Hong Kong government has not had any kind of policy that is very clear, loud and clear for the society, that if they haven't got the kind of clarity in direction, it's very difficult for any institution to provide more kind of resources in terms of time and people, manpower to do it.
Ethnic minorities, when they excel, they're bringing additional value, they're bringing diversity, they're bringing additional different perspectives in culture and languages. And all these are actually values to Hong Kong, and we shouldn't shove them under the carpet.
I was not taught Chinese, not in school. And so I learned it by myself. And so I thought, if I can learn it, why not a child? I mean, a child is developing much faster than an adult if they are given the right environment, the right support.
We'll be back after the break.